Hello, everyone, and welcome to our fifth and last session of Pharma webinar series. My name is Mayuri Rathod, and I will be your host cum moderator. In our today's webinar, speaker will talk about regulatory aspects of product life cycle management and 505(b)(2) products, case studies of using phospholipids, patent opportunities using phospholipids. As you all may be aware, 505(b)(2) provides a unique advantage from a non-clinical development perspective that can save significant amount of time, money, and resources. So today, we are honored to welcome as our guest speaker. Mr. Vijay Kumar Shivpuje is director in Patlex Business Solution, a knowledge process outsourcing firm. He has more than 15 years of experience and is expert in the domain of pharmaceutical patents, portfolio management, and competitive intelligence. He is closely involved in strategizing the development of NDDS products, 505(b)(2) products in the areas of injectables, dermatology, and respiratory products. Mr. Vijay Kumar is also involved in various mentoring activities with Government of India program like Atal Innovation Mission and Startup India. Dear attendees, so here's presenting Mr. Shiv Pujay to take you through an interesting knowledge sharing session. Over to you, Mr. Shiv Pujay.
Thank you so much, Mayuri, for the kind introduction. And good afternoon to everyone. A very warm good afternoon to everyone. So I'm here to discuss about the 55B2 products and their opportunities, and especially with respect to the phospholipids and liposomes as such. Let me also tell you beyond the introduction what Mayuri mentioned. Had this opportunity to work with both on the generic side as well as the innovation side of the pharmaceutical industry, wherein we were always involved into identifying the right opportunity for the company as a generics as well as a innovator as well. So as we know, there is a basic difference of understanding when we develop a product for an innovator and when we develop a product for a generic as a generic company. Considering most of the Indian companies are from the generic space, but then many of them are moving towards innovation and we had few attempts with respect to drug discovery as well, but then comparatively we have been successful in terms of the second tier of product, wherein we have been involved into development of some line extension or 55B2 products. So basically, we'll start with the fundamental concept of product lifecycle management, how a company or a generic company can even play a significant role into the product's lifecycle management, although they are not the ones who are actually discovering the new molecule as such. So this is a general life cycle of any product per se, any new molecule, new product, irrespective of the dosage form, irrespective of the therapeutic category, irrespective of the market. Once a drug is discovered, it needs clinical trials to get that NC or the new product getting launched. And at the end of the if there is any availability of the patents, because patent is something which is not mandatory first of all, but definitely if you're putting your money and discovering a new drug, definitely you would go for that. Once that patent gets expired, what you have is a generic product, which is launched actually, and suddenly the kind of monopoly you have enjoyed for long, the brand that has been established and which is earning a lot of revenue for your company upfront, all of a sudden that gets dried. For example, for a molecule which is $1 billion product, let's say in one particular country as such, a generic launch can actually ensure that your sales fall a lot actually for that particular product as such. and that there are lots of reasons, like generic would be selling at a lower price, or there would be lots of competitors as well who would be available in the market. Was the next option available with the companies there? Globally, the innovators have been involved into line extension strategies, which is what we call as typically as a product life cycle extension. How is it usually done? In terms, so I have included the kind of activities which can be part of line extension strategies. Line extension strategies need not be necessarily with respect to that particular exactly same molecule as such. You can come up with a new salt or a new enantiomer. That's what we can do as a line extension in terms of chemistry. In terms of pharmacology, what we have definitely is a new indication, also new dosing regimen, new strength, and we have lots of examples. A molecule like aspirin, which was which was actually indicated for a new indication. Typically, the industry is focusing more about the drug repurposing, which has been focus for the pharmacology in the recent past, and this is also something crucial as far as line extension strategies are concerned. New dosing regimen, we have lots of examples typically from the so-called novel drug delivery systems or the sustained release dosage form, those kind of examples, wherein in terms of line extension, these things are included. In case of pharmacology, also one of the option that is available is a newer strength as well. Okay, availability of newer strength. Now, the intent of generally about the life cycle extension or life cycle management is basically what revenue you have lost because of the expiry of the patent protection. You would try to actually gain some part of it, and through this, of course, you can do through the chemistry routes that we saw, the pharmacology routes that I mentioned, as well as the formulation routes. And I think this would have been the focus for us. The formulation teams, globally, or the NDDS teams, have been involved into line extension strategies like new dosage forms. We have lots of examples wherein a change in dosage form has actually kind of provided line extension for that particular product for the specific indication. We have new routes of administration as well, which has been tried for different molecules, providing the so-called product life cycle management. And and finally, of course, the new combinations as well. Many of us may be aware that, the one of the biggest molecules in the global pharmaceutical industry, atorvastatin, was tried with multiple combinations to come up so that the revenue which would be drying up after the expiry of the product, it was one of the biggest molecules in the history of pharma as such, right? Now, that molecule could actually that combination, but that combination failed basically. And by doing all this, the formulation change, the pharmacology change, or the chemistry change, how are you getting the actually the line extension, or how are you actually ensuring that your revenue is intact? Basically what we have is different kind of pathways that are available, regulatory pathways, and the last three line extension strategies that we saw typically exists in between. It's like I would say center of the innovator as well as generics, and this is the opportunity which is available for all the generic players as well. Now, we'll just try to compare the ways out the NDA 55B2 and the generics basically, and how 55B2 provides you an advantage as a generic company as well. Also, we have seen lots of examples wherein the new chemical entity was discovered by the innovator. Of course, the patent protection, after the patent protection, actually the line extension strategy was developed by the generic player instead of the innovator. That means you can actually, as a generic player, as a maybe if you're an independent researcher, university, or an academic institution, what you can do is you can block the life cycle extension of the innovator product. How is it done? We'll also try to see that now. NDA, as we know, like the for the new molecules, we have full clinical studies that are required, and as Mayuri rightly mentioned, you don't need to carry out the studies, the major studies for the 505(b)(2) products actually, and this is one big advantage. But one disclaimer or a precaution herein is at times you need to carry out the partial studies as well. Now, this is the second point. Of course, in case of generics, it's a bioequivalence study, which is very less costly. But then what you are getting at such is like 6 months exclusivity only as a generic, if at all, if you are the para 4, first para 4. We are discussing purely about the US market now, because 505(b)(2) as a concept is like more focused for the US FDA or US market. Now, what you have is a 5 years exclusivity, minimum 5 years exclusivity for the innovator. For a generic, you have 6 months exclusivity. The kind of gap that we have, like so that is kind of like based on the cost basically. If we see the 505(b)(2), it is kind of a center wherein it provides you 3 years of exclusivity. This is a market exclusivity basically, and not the NCE per se. That means the new chemical entity exclusivity. It's not there. So basically, if you have a 505(b)(2) product developed, and if you launch it, no one else can launch before 3 years. But yes, they can file ANDA against your 505(b)(2). That is allowed as such. In case of NCE, in case of NDA or NCE, even a generic player cannot actually file the ANDA before the end of the 4 years as such. So that's the basic difference of the exclusivity that NDA has and 505(b)(2) has. In this, it's not a NCE. It's not a. It doesn't bar any generic player to file the product. Okay, but it definitely bars the launch of that particular product. Now, when we have a new drug, it is generally approved as an NDA, filed as an NDA by the regulatory teams. 505(b)(2) basically deals with all the changes, life cycle extension जो strategies हमने देखा, all those changes are being incorporated through 505(b)(2) route by the regulatory teams. Generics, we know they are the equivalent products, basically with the same active, same indications, same release pattern, same profile, everything. Now, 505(b)(2) actually provides a lot of advantages which are included right here. The first and the major one, it's maybe at times without doing any clinical studies as well, you would be getting exclusivity over the products. That is something which is really very crucial. What everyone is looking forward to definitely is some kind of monopoly getting or the kind of exclusivity for your product. Then only you can actually bank on that particular product. Because if there is a competition from day one, or let's say a competition within 3 or 4 months time, then probably that investment won't be getting recovered as such. Now, this is one of the advantages of 505(b)(2) regulatory path. The second, comparatively, of course, it's connected. You have lesser competition. You would be basically competing with the NDA that is available, just against whom you have actually filed the 505(b)(2), and no other generic, at least for the time being, you have the exclusivity. Now, one of the major advantages of 505(b)(2) routes, or the changes as such that we saw for the life cycle extension strategies, is you get a patent protection for that as well. Now, we'll be discussing about the patent protection in the next slide as well. But as of now, what we need to understand is, in case of 505(b)(2), you can get a patent protection for your products as such. Finally, everyone is looking for a branded market and a product differentiation. Basically, if you are selling your product as a generic, definitely you have to sell it on the generic name. But if you have your product as a brand, the 505(b)(2) route, then you have that opportunity to sell your product as a brand, which is actually developing a lot of intangible assets for the company or intangible value for the company as well. So these are all the big advantages of 55B2 regulatory pathway has. Now, the next important thing about 55B2 regulatory pathway is that what I have done is I have listed out all the changes that we have in terms of 55B2 regulatory pathway, like change in dosage strength, change in indication, a new indication, drug repurposing, change in route of administration, change in active, like a change in salt, stereoisomer, isomer, enantiomer, a combination, and change in formulation or dosage form. Now, if I look at the first five, the patent protection is available for you. Non-infringement is non-infringement is difficult for a generic player. So, for example, if you get a patent for a new indication, no one else can launch that product because you have the patent protection. But then there is a catch here. The development cost comparatively for all this and the research required actually is much higher for change in strength, the change in indication, the change in route of administration, and change in active ingredient or combination salsa. And the easiest way to go for the 55B2 pathway generally has been achieved through the change in formulation or the dosage form. And most of the 55B2 companies are focusing on this, or the formulation based companies are focusing on this. Here in the advantages, you also get a patent protection. The development cost is really less, but then there is a disclaimer. The non-infringement for that particular patent is very easy, comparatively very easy, and that makes the the cost that has been involved for the development or the filing of the 55B2 product, you would have competition very soon, because the non-infringement is very easy. Any generic player can very easily actually kind of come up with a product which is similar to your product. So that's the big disadvantage if you are playing in the formulation or dosage form space basically. But the solution is provided by specialty products. And what are specialty products? Specialty products are the ones wherein the FDA doesn't easily allow you to make any changes to the product qualitatively as well as quantitatively. Qualitatively as well as quantitatively, FDA doesn't allow you to make any changes to the product if you want to do the if you want to sell the generic product. And herein, if you have a narrower protection for the patent, still the non-infringement may not be easy. If you try to non-infringe the patent, what happens is FDA won't allow you. If you want to change any excipient, the concentration of excipient, therein FDA won't allow you to come up to launch that product through the 55B2 route or file that product. Reason being, it may not be equivalent to your product as such. Now, here in the specialty products provide you a different kind of advantage, I would say. Lesser cost compared to the other routes, not like the lesser cost as compared to the development of generics, but the development cost for the changing indication may be much higher with the clinical studies, preclinical studies. But then in case of change in formulation or dosage form, the cost comparatively is lesser. And if you're coming up with these specialty products, that point of time, as I mentioned, non-infringement may be easy, but then the disadvantage herein is that for a generic player, of course, if you are the owner, if you are the 55B2 player, in that case, that's a big advantage for you to have a patent protection, whatever narrow protection it would have. We'll see all this with some case studies as well. And I have listed few case studies which are very specific to phospholipids. So this particular chart, so we have got three case studies basically. One from Pasira Biosciences, which is very unique, I would say. We have the of course most of the phospholipids or the for the have been used for the liposomal dosage form, and many times, like most of the times these are anti-cancer drugs as well. So we have doxorubicin and vincristine. These are three unique case studies that we have got, which provide us more idea about the use of phospholipids, specifically use of the phospholipids, or I would say the liposome in the specialty product, which may give you an advantage as a 5,5B2 developer. If you are a generic company, then also it's very easily to come up with these kind of development, because it's more about the actual development or the formulation development of the product, and not about the any other parameters like clinical and all as such. So we have these case studies of vincristine, known as and of course we have got some data with respect to how it impacted the actual business as well for all these three cases. Let's go to the first case, which is vincristine, an anti-cancer drug. If you see here, it's known as Makibo kit, and it's a liposomal injectable as such. Now, vincristine as a injectable was known already. It was known already, and then this particular company, Acrotech Biopharma, came up. So this is Lilly's product, Eli Lilly's product, basically. Okay, this particular company, Acrotech Biopharma, and a small venture as such, came up with a liposomal injectable, which was administered intravenously. Now, if you look at the strength as well, it's exactly same. Lilly's product had this 5 mg per vial, and they also came up as well as 1 mg per vial. They also came up with this 5 mg per 5 ml or 1 mg per ml product, the Acrotech. But then, if you look at this chart, this is of course taken from the Orange Book, USFDA official site. Now, your Lilly's injection product has already got generics launched in that. That is, if you have Teva and Hospira, of course, Lilly's product is discontinued now, but then you have Teva and Hospira that are available now. The third product, Acrotech Biopharma product, that is the one which I'm speaking about, which is the liposomal product using phospholipids. Now, if I actually get a protection for this kind of product in the US market, the patent protection basically, it's very narrower compared to the actually what typical patent protection is available for the NDAs, because this is a 5,5B2 product basically. Now, this particular product, had it been a tablet product or a capsule product, or maybe in a routine dosage form as such, SR product, in that case it would have been very easy to prepare a non-infringing product, and any generic could be in a position to launch a particular generic for that. And now what we have got here is a protection for this particular product, based on the patent that is available, and this patent is protecting this product for 20 years now, although the protection is really very narrow. Now, the one of the advantages of 5,5B2 products, especially the specialty products, I would say, is we have one requirement of obviousness, non-obviousness of the invention over the prior arts. So you cannot have a broader patent for a liposome, but there is always an opportunity to have a formulation patent for liposome with a particular phospholipid, which is very easy, showing some kind of inventive step involved in that, using that particular phospholipid. Now, but if you have the narrowest protection as well, FDA is not going to allow a generic player to make changes to this particular product. And although the protection herein is really narrow, because there is a weight ratio that has been mentioned actually for the sphingomyelin and Cholesterol as a generic player, if I change this, I'm out of the patent, but then practically it's not possible because we're playing in the specialty domain. FDA may not allow you to come up with a generic for this. Now, with lesser amount of cost involved into this, providing a 505(b)(2) route for the development, and you have got a long protection for your product for this Makibo, and a longer protection. Of course, also you have got this also advantage. If you look at the proprietary name part, in that case, the other two products by Teva and Hospira are sold as vincristine sulfate, that is with the generic name. Now, although your product is 505(b)(2), it's not a pure NDA. What you have got here in is you're selling it as a Makibo kit. A brand is created, a brand value is generated out of this, and this is a huge advantage for any company as far as the intangible assets are concerned. And this is what actually your specialty products, the and specifically if it is connected with the lipid like this, then it would be providing you as a brand owner basically, or the 505(b)(2) developer. For the generics, it is very difficult. So instead of copying someone else's generic, try to go with a specialty product and have a protection which would provide you some kind of monopoly or exclusivity for. Now, this is classic case wherein Eli Lilly's molecule and actually the life cycle extension strategy is by some other company. Now, this is what any generic company can do. Of course, doing it in terms of oral products or the routine conventional dosage forms may be easier, but for a specialty, you may involve some kind of technology as well. Now, what we have as a case, next case is a product called Doxil. Now, Doxil is basically doxorubicin, another anti-cancer drug. Now, if you see this, there are three generic players available for Doxil. Doxil is basically a Baxter product, and we have got three separate generic players as such: Zydus, Dr. Reddy's, and Sun Pharma, who are selling this product as on today. Now, if you look at this particular product contains, this is another product which is which was created as a 505(b)(2) product. If you look at the content of this, again, it has the phospholipids, as well as what it also has is a very narrower patent product protection answer. And this is another classic case wherein I would say you have a patent, your product was approved in 1995. The product was approved in 1995. The patent expired in 2007. But then what you got after the patent expiry, the first generic was launched in 2013. Eventually, what you got is almost 18 years of exclusivity. 18 years of exclusivity for the first generic launch, which is a really good amount. No product patent gives you 18 years of exclusivity, because if you discover a new molecule, you would require at least 6 to 7 years, minimum 6 to 7 years to launch that product as such. And those 6 to 7 years may be kind of, reduced from the 20 years time. But then what you are getting here is 18 years of exclusivity basically. Now, another point to look here is the Dr. Reddy's lab. Now, usually what we see herein is with respect to traditional or conventional products, when we analyze this for the competitive intelligence, who is developing what basically, which company is developing which product, which therapeutic category, which kind of dosage form. Therein, what we see usually is that one generic is launched, and in 3 or 6 months gap, you have the next generic launched. Now, if you see this, yahan pe the difference is almost 4 years. And if we consider product approval, say this time is actually 22 years, because I would say Sun Pharma is the first to launch generic. Sun Pharma continued continued the monopoly as a generic for another 4 years actually. Now, this is something, and thereafter the third generic required almost three another years. So you had 18 years exclusivity because of the patent, as well as, of course, 2007 till 2007 you had the patent, which was actually providing you an exclusivity. But then if you have a complex product like this using let's say phospholipids, or in a kind of a liposomal product, which is a specialty product, you are getting another set of exclusivity, which may be because every generic company may not have that kind of facility or that kind of risk taking appetite as well to come up with a complex product or specialty product. Now, this is another case study wherein, using the phospholipids through the 505(b)(2) route, basically, you have got longer monopoly as such, as a product, and that too in a market which is like US, which is big market as such, and which everyone is actually eyeing. See, if we see at a typically at a generic company, what they do is, for 180 days exclusivity under paragraph 4, 6 months exclusivity for paragraph 4, they're ready to fight the litigation there, which has got, I would say, so much of we don't know what is going to happen with the litigation tomorrow, whether you're going to win or lose. Actually, there is more unpredictability in terms of litigation. You're developing that product, you're going into litigation and trying to launch just for 180 days exclusivity. Now, if you look at the other side of the story, if you come up with a product like this, let's say Doxil, okay, therein you are getting not 6 months, you're getting almost 18 months, 18 years of exclusivity, which for any company, any generic company for that sake, may be really very huge as such, right? And this is something which has been provided by the specialty products, especially in the domain of liposomes or the injectables, and which can be a big asset for a company as such. Again, you have the big advantage of selling the product as a brand and creating that brand value, or what we call as a intangible asset for your company as well. Next case study, which is actually a very unique, I would say, Exparel product, which is bupivacaine, and which is by Pacira Pharmaceuticals, Pacira Biosciences. Now, what this company has actually come up with is a unique way to deal with the liposomal products. They have got their unique, I would say, the process and a process for preparing. So they have come up with a technology, basically a platform technology, basically, for the liposomes, and of course it uses the phospholipids. Now, this particular technology they have come up liposomal technology, and they have got an advantage that they are now applying this technology to multiple molecules as such. How one technology that is protected? Let me tell you, this particular patent 95, if you see the number 9585838, this is the US patent. This particular patent is listed against so many products, have a liposomal technology, which is very broad, and which of course it also includes the phospholipids. And what advantage you have is developing one technology, developing one product out of it, get it approved. Basically, this is a platform technology, basically, okay, and you have a pathway that is created for you for the launch of other products very easily. What we typically call as drug repurposing, taking those old molecules for a new indication. Can we do it for the same products, same old molecules, with respect to, I would say, the injectables or the anti-cancer drugs through that particular platform technology? Pacira Biosciences or Pacira Pharmaceuticals is exactly doing the same stuff in this particular liposomal domain. coming up with a platform technology, which, and again, the advantage also is that platform technologies are very easily patentable, have an advantage of, like, 20 years exclusivity. A big advantage I would call in terms of platform technologies also that it can be out licensed as well, and it is really very difficult at times to replicate the platform technology. And if you want to replicate the product as a generic, then in that case you need to use that technology. If you want to use that technology, the patent protects it and patent bars it for anyone except Pasira to use that particular technology, basically. So this is one way which I which is something, like, companies are trying out. Some a smaller companies are trying out, coming with a niche product instead of having a basket of 150 products. Maybe now I have went through the, like, the profiles of these companies. These are companies, the company like Pasira Biosciences or Pharmaceuticals has been involved into niche research. Instead of going for a basket of 100 or 150 products, can we work on 3 or 4 products which may be specialty, which may be 505(b)(2) route, which may be providing us a lot of advantages moving ahead in terms of business as well as in terms of our branding as well as an organization as such. So this is one product, Exparel, uh, which is included, like, in this particular as a case study, Bupivacaine. There is one more product which is from the same patent, or I would say the same technology it uses as such. Let me just go back to my previous sheet, which would give us an idea about what that product is. Okay, so I didn't include it here because Depodur, at that point of time, it was considered as a one of the I would say technology, one of the products which was considered as a in the early days of very early liposomal success stories, I would call liposomal injectable product Depodur morphine sulfate. So this was another product which Pasira actually launched using the same. It's no more available now, but then so we have these case three studies. Just to summarize or conclude what I have within the time limit that has been provided to me is, see, the drug discovery domain is something like, wherein we as a generic industry have really got very less, I would say, opportunities, or, like, we have not been successful. But then the specialty product provide you different advantages, and it may be the future for the pharmaceutical industry as well through life cycle extension. And there are lots of cases wherein, not only for the liposomal dosage forms, but for lots of other dosage forms as well, wherein we have the life cycle extension strategies being developed not by the innovator but by the generic player. So as a generic player, venturing into something like this is a great advantage as such, with the lesser cost and lots of advantages. And for phospholipid containing products like liposome provide better opportunities, as the patent protection provides exclusivity for almost 20 years. See, as I mentioned, the patent protection herein is comparatively narrow if you ask a patent expert, but practically speaking, to get that approved by the FDA as a generic, this patent provides you enough opportunity or exclusivity as such. Third pointer which I discussed here in is a single platform technology development, and applying the same to varied molecules can be really useful for the redevelopment of the old molecules, or the so-called drug repurposing. So this is something that I have for you for the day as far as this particular presentation is concerned. Just before actually concluding, let me just brief you about my activities and the company that I represent. As such, we have been working as a knowledge process outsourcing company since last 3 years, based in Navi Mumbai. We have been involved with lots of corporates as well as the academic and the university clients, wherein we have been involved into competitive intelligence, product portfolio management, IPR protection. For the corporates, we have MSMEs, the Fortune 500 companies. we also work with one of the biggest pharmaceutical industry in India, which is among top five as such, top five in terms of volume and the business, and it is one of the most aggressive company as far as research is concerned. On the academic fronts, we have this brand called Pharma Literati, which is an educational initiative basically for the activities related to educational setups. We help in terms of innovation incubation startup, and definitely we help in terms of patent filings as well. So this is what I have for all of you. Once again, thank you so much for joining and having me here. I would be more than happy to answer if there are any questions. Yeah, over to you, Mayuri.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Vijay Kumar. So it was wonderful having you in our webinar today. And as you shared your knowledge on the patent opportunities using phospholipids and making of liposome formulations, I'm sure my attendees were able to captivate knowledge and insights. So now we move on to Q&A session. I request you all to type in your questions in the chat box. Okay, so we have our first question here. What is the reluctance for Indian companies to take up the 505 route aggressively, given the vast opportunities?
Yeah, thank you so much, sir, for this particular question. And I think this is one of the most significant things as far as 55B2 is concerned. See, sir, basically Indian companies are getting involved into 55B2. The bigger companies have been involved into exploring these opportunities, but then the focus has been restricted initially towards the so-called the oral dosage form kind of product, and not a specialty product as such. As well, what we have seen is we have got this very traditional system of developing the generics aggressively. We can, like, the timeline at times which is required for the development basically of a generic product comparatively is lesser. But then nowadays, I think I shouldn't name the companies, but then there are few companies which have got specialty product departments which are involved into typically the opportunities which are available for 505B2 as well. So this is, I would call, incremental innovation. So traditionally, Indian pharma has been the generic industry, but then instead of full innovation of drug discovery, we have got these companies taking a lead in terms of 505B2. But unfortunately, I would say not in the so-called specialty domain like injectables or liposomes that we discussed. But I think that is something also which provides a lot of opportunity. I hope I have tried to answer this question.
Yeah. Okay. So we have another question that 505B2 is limited to US FDA. Then what is the route that is adopted for EU market?
Yeah, so Tanvi, we have 55B2 specifically for the US market, but then Europe provides you different opportunities. There are different pathways that are available actually in which are dependent on the individual country basically, as well as in Europe, many a times, many of these things are approved as a generic. Like for example, I'll tell you, US needs change in salt to be approved as a 55B2. Europe approves it as a normal generic as well, and many companies have done it successfully in the past as well. That launching these change in salt basically in the Europe market as a generic product. But yes, there are lots of other pathways which are country specific. Maybe there can be a full session by a regulatory professional who can tell us the equivalent of 55B2 in Europe. Yeah.
Okay. Fine. So we have next question. Is it possible to 505B2 over an existing 505B2 by improving choice of phospholipid?
Yeah, I think yes, it is possible. But then why would someone do that? A reason being, reason being, see, definitely you would like to have your comparator as a the RLD or the NDA against which the first 505B2 is approved. But yes, uh, you can actually come up with a second 505B2 which wherein the RLD is the first NDA. So first NDA is there. There is a first 505B2 product which is available as a liposome. You are coming up with a second. So your RLD is not this first 505B2, but your RLD is the NDA, the first product. Therein, I think it would definitely make sense. But also, sir, I think herein what we need to also look into is if typically in case of generic, you have one RLD, one brand competing with generics. In case you have one brand, then which is a NDA, you have second brand which is a 505B2 product, right? And then you are creating a third brand out of it. Now the market would be overcrowded. The business angle, I think, yeah, herein we need to look into whether it would be really make sense from a typical business point of view to come up with development point of view. It makes sense actually, but then from business point of view, if it makes sense, if it's a really big molecule, yes, you can go for it, sir. Yeah.
Okay, fine. So we have another question. Is the big opportunity in pulmonary delivery given the high or instant permeability of phospholipid?
uh I think I'm not pretty sure to answer this question, but just maybe like you can guide me on this. Does the because the focus has shifted definitely to the recipe, MPI, DPIs, and nasal sprays, but I don't know whether the phospholipids actually have got the applications in this particular route of administration. If yes, then definitely you have the permeability easily because the focus has been shifted. And the COVID situation like the respiratory diseases have been at the forefront currently, and for next few years this market is definitely be stable or growing as such, and I believe this is something which can be looked forward into. Yeah.
Okay, fine. So we have another question that if we have a narrow patent on our product, then what will be the ground that FDA will bear filing another patent with slight variation?
Yeah, so it's not patenting with respect to the slight variation, but if you are filing a product, see, in case of specialty products, the FDA doesn't allow you to change like in case of ophthalmics, it doesn't allow you to change the stabilizer as such. If you change the stabilizer, you conduct the studies, the clinical studies as well. So they don't consider these products to be bioequivalent to the first RLD as such or the ND, and on that ground itself, that's true as well. Because in nowadays, so even in case of few of the oral products as well, they don't allow you to change the shape and size and of that particular tablet as such. So definitely for the specialty products, this is one thing which is there existing. FDA bars it on the basis of inequivalence basically, and you have to show it basically, okay, to the FDA, and actually conducting the studies for that may not be a viable option typically from a business perspective. Yeah.
Okay, so today we are done with the question and answer. Okay, so once again, thank you, Mr. Vijay Kumar Shivpuje. It was pleasure having you here today. I would like to specially thank the attendees who devotedly followed us from the first webinar, and today was the ninth webinar. We truly appreciate your support. You all made us this webinar series more interesting, and I hope you all learned from it and enjoyed participating in it as much as we enjoyed having you here. Thank you again, all of you, and hope to see you in all our future events. I, on behalf of VAV team, request you to please keep visiting our LinkedIn page to get update on our next webinar series. Wishing you all good health and happiness. Hope to see you all soon. Goodbye. Goodbye, Mr. Shivpuje.
Bye. Take care.